Hey, welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. I am Hollis, and this week I'm going to be bringing you part one of a two-part episode on Ween, one of my all-time favorite bands. I know I say that a lot, but Ween is the band I have seen live more than any other band, so that's got to count for something. I thought about ranking the albums, but that's crazy because I love all Ween albums. So I'm going chronologically, and this will be episode one of two. I love that Steely Dan and Ween are going to be the only two bands that I do two-part episodes for, but such is life. So please join me for part one of the epic saga of Ween. Sure is getting brown in here. That was a very inside reference. It's brown o'clock. Still. If you're enjoying the content I'm bringing you from week to week and would like to help support the show, please consider joining my Patreon. It's at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard. And thanks. Just one more quick word before the deep dive. I just want to say rest in peace to the beautiful and massively talented Olivia Newton-John. For a young boy who grew up in the 70s and early 80s, she was my first crush. And that crush never went away. In addition to being breathtakingly beautiful, Olivia had an innocent quality, which is why none of us blinked an eye in the movie Grease when she played a high schooler at the age of 30. So rest in peace, Olivia. You're still top 10, laminated. In 1990, the band released GodWeenSatan, the Oneness. This album was released on Twin Tone Records, and this original pressing sounds amazing. The band here is simply Gene Ween on vocals and guitar, and Dean Ween on guitar and vocals. But they will also answer to Jeaner and Diener. This little guy on the cover is named a Boognish. The Boognish is a demon god who blessed Dean and Gene with their musical abilities, or at least the spicy brown mustard that makes their sounds so damn enticing. Anyway, the Boognish did his job well on this album. This has 2 discs packed with some of the most arresting music you've ever heard in your life. This album opens with the outlandishly heavy guitar track, You Fucked Up, and it really sets the tone for the entire album. And that is specifically 2 guys who make as much noise as 5 guys. Tick, I'm in the Mood to Move, I Got a Weasel, Fat Lenny, Cold and Wet. This has some really, really funny stuff on it, but it's delivered as deadly serious. Tick is a perfect song to encapsulate why Ween are great. A simple song about a tick burrowed into a narrator's head winds up reading like a horror story from Lovecraft, where the host ends up looking way more despicable and violent than the parasite. What's really wonderful about this album is how many different moods the band accomplished from one track to the next. Take Bumblebee, Don't Laugh, I Love You, and Never Squeal. Those 3 songs could not be more different. And they're funny song, beautiful song, funny song. Bumblebee is this amazingly heavy, fantastic punk rock moment, which basically invents screamo, and it's followed by Don't Laugh, I Love You, which is a beautiful, easy on the ears love song. And then in Never Squeal, we're right back into the humor again. The fervent Up on the Hill gives you a twisted church hymn espousing the mythology of the Boognish. My favorite songs on this entire album, though, are Wayne's Pet Youngin', which features my favorite line, I think, in any Ween song. The lyric goes, you name the game and I'll bring Dwayne and Roger and Rerun to Wayne's Pet Youngin'. They managed to get a What's Happenin' reference into Wayne's Pet Youngin'. How great is that? And that keys you in to the playfulness on this entire album. By the way, the guitar work on Wayne's Pet Youngin' is ridiculous. Dean could play his ass off. Another song I love on here is the 9+ minute Nicole, a sleepy kind of reggae number, which is a song that's as laid back as Wayne's Pet Youngin' is balls to the wall. Licking the Palm for Guava is another great song that's only a minute long and yet manages to lay out the entire sonic landscape that is Ween. Just to tell you how funky the boys are, they cover Prince. You'll of course recognize it. LMLYP, which stands for Let Me Lick Your Anyway. LMLYP is a gorgeously funky tribute to Prince, reworking the cymbals' sexy shockadelica and adding the rap part from another Prince song, Alphabet Street. The song Squelch the Weasel has perhaps my favorite guitar tone on this entire album, and the kind of faux sacred text lyrics that defines Ween at their most playful. But I'd have to say my favorite song on this entire album is Marble Tulip Juicy Tree. I would scream for this song every time they played live, and they most of the time played it anyway. It's got this beautiful psychedelic circular guitar pattern, which gives way to an overpowering, overdriven guitar as the song explodes into its proper form. I think Marble Tulip Juicy Tree is about tripping on mushrooms, the quote-unquote fungus that grows, referred to in the song. I also believe this because the rest of its lyrics read like a hallucination, and it is one of these songs that I'll be putting a link to below, because I think Marble Tulip Juicy Tree, more than a lot of others, sums up what is brilliant about this album. You know, I think a lot of this album's greatness gets forgotten today, because people just judge it next to other songs that they downloaded from the internet. And I think a lot of the time and place aspects of this album, like most albums from its time period, get lost in the translation. At the time this album was released, most music was really polished, and this album stood in direct opposition from all of the major label releases that had this layer of production gloss over it. Ween's stuff had that lo-fi feel of a band that was born out of their bedroom. This is a magical album and announces the arrival of a very, very unique band. I absolutely adore GodWeenSatan, but if you are coming fresh to the band, this should not be your entry point. Or maybe it should. You know, blow out some of the exhaust. This may be Ween at their brownest. In 1991, the band released The Pod. This is an original pressing on Shimmy Disc. The Pod is my all-time favorite Ween album. It is the album that got me into Ween, so perhaps that's why I have a soft spot in my heart for it. But I just think all of the songs on this album are exactly what I wanted to hear from Ween. The cover art is, of course, a spoof on the Leonard Cohen Greatest Hits cover, except this one features Mean Ween, their sometimes bass player and good friend. Mean is wearing a nitrous oxide powered bong, which for years was called a Scotchgard bong. Scotchgard bong was the funniest type of aerosol abuse the band could make up. The opener, Strap on That Jammy Pack, is one of my favorite album openers ever. They used to open concerts when I would see them with Strap on That Jammy Pack. It just made for the perfect opening to a concert. This has some of my all-time favorite Ween songs on it. Dr. Rock is, I think, their greatest rock song. It allows Dean to show off on guitar, and he does show off. And it allows Gene to shoot his voice into the stratosphere on those choruses. Dr. Rock is one of the hardest rocking songs ever. I think it's simply an articulation of all the exhilarating feelings one gets from rock and roll, personified by a nonsensical dramatization. You better run and get your mammy, 'cause this tune rocks. I also love the song The Stallion, Part 1. The Stallion Part 1 is Part 1 in a continuing suite of songs. This first installment of The Stallion sounds really malevolent, with an angry stallion you do not want to mess with. Stallion Part 2 closes this album. There are many stallions, they're all brilliant, and we will get into other parts of the stallion later. Can You Taste the Waste and Awesome Sound are other classics on this album. The intense Demon Sweat is a slow jam even Satan would love. The ear-cloying guitar rocker Sketches of Winkle proves that there's no limit to the speed at which Diener can play. Oh My Dear Falling in Love is their greatest love song since Don't Laugh I Love You off of GodWeenSatan. So many Ween inside jokes are on this album, like pork roll, egg and cheese, on a Kaiser bun of course, is one of the most fun tracks in their entire discography. The same is true of Pollo Asado, which is simply a deconstructionist take on someone going through a drive-thru at a Mexican restaurant. almost the Mexican food equivalent of Cookie Puss by the Beastie Boys. One of my favorite tracks on this album is Mononucleosis. Mononucleosis chronicles a time when Gene and Dean were both suffering from mono together. Isn't that sweet? I love the mythology of it, where the first lines of the song are, "When you came into the pod," which was their home/recording studio at the time. I love when artists refer to themselves or their living situation in their work. In my opinion, the song "She Fucks Me" is one of the most beautiful love songs Ween ever wrote. But being Ween, they have to make up for that by cursing. But even that cannot detract from the beauty of the song. But my favorite song on this entire sprawling masterpiece is Captain Fantasy. To truly understand early Ween, look no further than Captain Fantasy. Please would you like to be somewhere floating free? Seems my destiny, Captain Fantasy. And the lyrics just get weirder. Captain Fantasy is probably my favorite Ween song ever. It perfectly distills the Ween sound and the Ween song craft into one genius tune. I have no idea what the song is really about, but to me, Ween is Captain Fantasy, leading me beneath the reaches of sound and delivering all of these weird, wonderful dreamscapes you find in their songs. Why, yes, I would like to be somewhere floating free. Thank you for asking, Ween. I will be putting a link to Captain Fantasy below, along with Mononucleosis, to give you a full idea of the genius of this album, The Pod. Once again, my favorite Ween album. In 1992, the band released Pure Guava. Hey everybody, Ween signed to a major label. Oh wow, does that mean that they sold out and refined their sound? No, it doesn't. This album, which came out on Elektra Records, gives you Ween as wonderfully weird and bizarre as ever. From the opening track, Little Birdie, which is a song I adore, they prove to you that they are not selling out. Tender Situation is one of my favorite Ween songs, and one of the best songs they ever performed live. Briefly on stage, kind of switch personas, with Gene Ween playing a kind of unlearned guitar style, and Dean Ween taking over on sort of disturbed vocals. And it's just magical. Tender Situation is supposedly about the time Ween almost broke up during their early days, when another band wanted Diener to play guitar for them. Luckily, Gene and Dean talked it out at the gas station where Dean worked, and the two decided to stay together and become the band that we all love. This also houses The Stallion Part 3, in the ongoing epic saga that is The Stallion. The Stallion Part 3 is my favorite of all the Stallions. Bear with me. If Part 1 saw the Stallion drunk, and Part 2 saw the Stallion on marijuana, then this third installment finds the Stallion high on mushrooms. It's a nonsensical song featuring a helium-voiced Gene and many diverging melodies that work perfectly together. And it's got my favorite guitar tone on the entire album. Hey dude, he's the Stallion. Yes, that's me. It features Big Jilm, J-I-L-M, Jilm. It features jokey songs such as The Goin' Gets Tough from the Get-Go, I Play It Off Legit, Pumpin' for the Man, and the irresistible Reggae Junkie Jew, which features the couplet Matzafarian, Reggae Junkie Jew. The beautiful ballad Sarah was written for Gene's girlfriend at the time, who would later become his wife. Touch My Tutor is my all-time favorite song about erectile dysfunction. Yes, there are quite a few of them. This album, of course, houses Push the Little Daisies, which became a big hit for the band, as much as the band could have a big hit at the time. When the video started getting played on MTV, Beavis and Butthead even watched the video on their very popular show. Push the Little Daisies, I believe, is about nipples. Yes, female nipples. And how when they're, well, you know. Anyway, the other lyrics clue you in that it's really a love song. A crude love song, perhaps, but a love song nonetheless. It is oddly infectious, and it rockets me back to 1993 like few other songs do. And what happened with Push the Little Daisies is kind of the only way that you want a band like Ween to break through. They did not change a damn thing about their sound or who they were. And for some reason, one of their bizarre songs tickled the zeitgeist just enough that it became semi-popular. While talking about this album, I just want to bring up the Sky Cruiser EP, This came out in 1992 on White Records, although it is copyrighted 1993. And it features 2 tracks from Pure Guava, Big Jilm, and Don't Get Too Close to My Fantasy. It also features Cover It With Gas and Set It On Fire, which is a song that has always come alive in concert and is a real crowd pleaser. But the EP's titular track, Sky Cruiser, is really what I want to talk about. I think it is a wonderful, forgotten Ween track, and if you haven't heard it, I'm going to put a link to it below. It is a delightful, fun, poppy song that I would have loved to have had included on Pure Guava. And the popularity of Push the Little Daisies, I thought, was about as far as they would go popularity-wise. So people had a little bit of a buzz over that song, and then they would jump off the ship when Ween released their next album. Well, that's not what happened. For the rest of this week's episode, please join my Patreon at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard, or click above for more free content. Oh, man, thunder, sound of thunder, roll! That was me.